I like to think about where I'd be without some people in my life. I like to take them out of the equation and see where I end up. For example, if I take my grandfather out, then I'd be studying engineering instead of watching Casablanca on repeat with him saying, "You should dance like Shirley Temple" from the corner of the rocking room. If I take my brother out of the equation, then I would have been a jock in high school. He gave me an encyclopedic knowledge of the Nintendo history and their company, and made sure that I knew all 150 Pokemon, plus Mew and Mewtwo in case anyone asked. No one has yet, but I know it just in case. If I take my childhood best friend Molly out of the equation, then I would be much more selfish and have a couple more bones in my right wrist. Then there are some people who make a bigger impact, and without them, I wouldn't be standing here at all. I would be throwing up backstage. The summer of my sophomore year at Northwestern, I got an internship at the world-famous I.O. Theater. Their words, not mine. It was essentially, I was a glorified and sometimes unglorified janitor, but I got to be up and close personal with some of our city's best improvisers and comedians. And it also covered the cost of classes, which let me spring for the fancy flavors of Easy Mac at 7-Eleven. Sure, I would just be ripping tickets and tapping kegs, but I would be in the same building that Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and Seth Meyers learned the trade. And I was fucking terrified. At the internship orientation, I was shoved into a meeting room with 50 other intimidating men with facial beards and women, actual grown women who looked like they had day jobs that paid for their flats in Lakeview. I spent my first few shifts trying to blend into the walls, which, considering I was wearing black in a black box theater, proved easy to do. Occasionally, an improv hero of mine would ask me to go get a beer from the back. My hands would get all clammy and my mouth would dry up, and he would ask again, "Hey, Maggie, could you get me a beer from the back?" And then I would start sweating because he remembered my name, and before I knew it, he'd just say, "Oh, never mind, I'll get it myself," and he'd go back and get it himself, and I would realize what had just happened and then try even harder to be the coat rack in the back of the room. In my improv classes, it was a much different story. I mean, I could be anybody. I could be a vampire, or I could be a truck driver, or once I was a firefighter who was just trying to look for his Dalmatian after his divorce fell through. But when it came to my working shift on Saturday nights, I would have given anything to be a vampire, a truck driver, or even the divorcee looking for Sparky. Because who was Maggie? She was still studying in college. Most of the other interns and all the improvisers had agents and were auditioning for SNL every year, whereas I was still sharing a room and hoping that my English credit would still count for my film minor. It doesn't, by the way. On Wednesday night, I was sitting in the back of the theater with the lighting guy watching a new team when I heard a gruff voice from behind me. What was wrong with that last scene? I turned around fully expecting to see a Cubs fan they would sometimes wander in their drunken rampages, but instead I saw a figure that I had seen lurking around the theater, Chen. He was a very squat man with a very square face. He kind of looked like Oscar the Grouch if his parents had also immigrated from China in the late 60s. I started to spiral into self-doubt. Why was he asking me? What if I said something wrong? Is this an intern test? Should I just tell him that I quit now? Before I could draw up the papers to formally resign, he asked again, "What do you think was wrong with that last scene?" I thought it was funny. Don't say it was funny. You didn't laugh. I didn't laugh. What was wrong with it? What was it? They didn't know each other? Eureka! That's exactly it! He said a little too loudly. Andrew, the bartender, gave us a glare and then poured us 2 whiskey shots. Now, excuse me while I go finish my notes in the back of the theater. He downed both whiskey shots, I had misinterpreted that second pour, and went back to the theater and copiously wrote notes on his Captain America notepad. And my hands finally stopped sweating. Our interactions continued like that, sporadic and memorable. He once brought me a stack of comic books for me to borrow after I'd mentioned that Northwestern's library was a little bit lacking in the comic department. But if you support the library, please continue to do so. Don't take that as a grain of salt. He'd introduced me to high-profile performance shows. I played it super cool. No one knew that I had baseball cards with their faces and stats. And I also started to feel a little bit like a home. I started actually talking to the improvisers, and I did whiskey slaps, which is apparently some sort of initiation into their club. So, of course, Jason immediately found a very large cliff to push me off of. In mid-December, Jason pulled me aside after a very long shift. I had already peeled 3 strips of toilet paper off of the walls when he asked me, "Do you write sketches?" "No," I said with such confidence that it startled me. This was not close to the truth. I had been writing sketches. In my psychoanalysis and film class, sorry, Professor Demetra, I had written whole sketches, character descriptions, even stage directions, and my name written 20 times with a different last name. Oh, young love. "That's not true," Jason barked. "Everyone with half a brain can write a sketch. Come to my meeting on Wednesday, 7 p.m. You're going to pitch a show for me on Saturday." And then he walked away with such confidence that I was once again startled. This is it, I thought. This is where I'm about to disappoint my hero. On Wednesday, I walked into the writer's room, and Jason and those who had occupied the room before him had old show posters, had famous friends, and used napkins from the Salt and Pepper Diner. As messy as it was, you couldn't deny the talent that littered the scraps of paper. Which was probably the reason why I immediately bolted for the exit, but lo, Jason caught me before I could escape. "Whoa, no, we're meeting in here," he said as he was carrying a large box of donuts. "Here, take a donut." I actually, so the funny thing is, I didn't write any sketches. I don't know how many sketches. Jason disregarded everything I said, like the coat rack I was, and he grabbed the notebook out of my hand, flipped through my chicken scratch, and there he found all of my pitches. A janitor who moonlighted as a detective on the weekends, a video game character who cosplayed as an accountant, the Red Wedding Planner, for all you Game of Thrones fans out there. I was mortified. These were the dumbest things that I could possibly have found in the back of my brain. They were so dumb. "Give me full drafts by tomorrow, Fish," he said. "Can you play the janitor detective? I have a pipe that you can use." Now, I would like to stop and say that Jason never said the sketches were great, because they weren't. But some things I would like to think were clever, but they were definitely not ready to be put on stage or filmed or flaunted in front of Lorne Michaels or played for my flat in Lakeview someday. But Jason didn't say any of that. He said, "Do them. Write them. You have 4 days." And so I did. In my time at Chicago, I performed in 20 of Jason's shows, including the Halloween show, the Christmas Spectacular, and the Saturday variety show. And he gave me an hour-long sketch show out here in Hollywood, which led me to move out here. I'm never going to say I was the best, but by God, I did it. I wrote and I performed, and before long, I became comfortable with the uncomfortable. I lived in the unknown with my fellow improvisers and comics, and together we created a space where we could succeed and fail and push each other off of any cliff that we found. I even was able to pass out PBRs without sweating through my shirts. It was a big day. A few months ago, after arriving back in Los Angeles from a flight, my phone was flooded with calls and texts from that same family. Jason Chen had passed away in the night. I had seen him just a few weeks ago, visiting him in my old IO haunt in Chicago. He made fun of me for abandoning him for warmer weather, which I did, and it told me I had a lot of great things coming my way. He was only 47 years old, and out of the blue, he was found in his apartment, right next to the comic books, probably the same ones that he had given me. Now, I don't really like to play that game, taking someone out of the equation of my life, because here I am after the equal sign, and I don't like to think where I'd be without Jason's support or guidance. And I'll never be able to pay it forward, what Jason did for me. But when my childhood neighbor said that she wanted to study women's rights in the Middle East, I was like, yeah, girl, that's what you're meant to do. Also, remember the few bones that are missing in my wrist? It's all you, girl. Or when my best friend said that she was too afraid to try stand-up, I found the nearest cliff, an open mic, and signed her up behind her back. Because that's what Jason would have done. And I'm not saying I'm a superhero like him, but I'll never forget the day that he took a chance on a coat rack.